My name is Tamara Felden. I'm the Director of the Office of International Affairs. And to give you a little bit of an explanation of all the technology that's happening, we are taping, recording many of the sessions today because we know how busy a weekend this is for you and how many things you're trying to cover to learn as much as you can about your son's or daughter's future experience here and with whom we work. So these materials will become available online at a later time, and you will receive information about that. So the camera will try to follow me. That's also the reason why I'm wearing a mic, because normally in a room of this size, I would wander amongst you and speak without a microphone. So we're going to work to accommodate the technology a little bit. You have a handout, and there is also a business card coming around, my card. If you have not received one of these things, we will have some up here in the front for you to pick up afterwards. Feel free, if you have an extra one, to pass it on. We always welcome your communication, and if you have questions or concerns at a future time, and we will have time today for some questions and answers. So let me tell you a little bit who we are and what we do. My office consists of 15 professionals who work across all areas of immigration law and international education. So we have a full staff. Your son or daughter works with a dedicated advisor who is specialized for the college, for the programming there. In other words, has a keen understanding of what our undergraduates experience, their background, the kinds of experiences they have. So we work directly with students in a variety of ways. We also work with our colleagues across the university to help them have a good understanding of what it's like to be an international student. So for example, our student counseling service has a particular focus every year that it tries to learn about and develop new resources for. And I've been told that this year the focus of that office is going to be international students. So we will work closely with them to give them various experiential exercises and things of that nature. So we serve your students indirectly by working with everyone in the university, because individuals who have not been abroad, who don't have the experience of what it's like to do this, can derive a lot from these training sessions. So we do a lot of things in the background as well. Since we have just an hour today, we try to pull together some key things, and they are very far-ranging. And so I will walk us through this handout a little bit, but certainly your questions on other issues are very much welcome. One of the things we point out very early on is that we are here to assist your son or daughter with all the immigration issues. Obviously, we have issued the documents that they have needed, and we answer questions. We have training sessions when new issues come up, or when their next step, for example, when they want to maybe have an internship or something like that comes up. But it's also very, very important for the student to understand that it is his or her vital responsibility to pay attention to these things. So one of the things we're going to talk a little bit about today is communication. It can be a little bit unnerving, having experienced so far the US immigration system, to be an international student in the US, and we fully understand that. It is a very cumbersome system. Few offices understand that as well as my office. So what we want to accomplish is that our students do not live a life where they're looking over their shoulder being worried about something. We always tell them, as long as you pay attention to our email, you're okay. Because we have a weekly digest. We send specific messages out that have to do with, here now is a particular stage in your studies. Here is something that may be relevant to you. And we're very, very specific in our instructions. So as long as they open the email and look at it and do what we're saying, they don't have to worry about things. And then as complexities occur, a student who has an internship that maybe doesn't fit so well into the academic year, whatever the case may be, or a student who for some reason may have to come home for a period of time, all the kinds of things that occur in students' lives, we certainly work with students on an individual basis. Our advisors meet with students one-on-one to walk through very specifically what is your issue, what is your question, and how do we work through that. Sometimes That means that a student has 2 or 3 different options. And the question is, what option is the best short-term or longer-term solution? And so your student will soon be in a position to have to participate in decision-making about his or her approach to these things. And we certainly work with them very closely on that, and we look forward to that. So communication with OIA, I should tell you all your sons and daughters are going to be on our email list, and they can't get off our email list. They could not unsubscribe. The game is rigged. We want to make sure that they indeed receive our communication because it is really essential. And so there are various resources we have available. We have our website. We do training sessions. For example, when employment authorization becomes an issue, we do a series of those. We have a Facebook page for the things that are more entertaining and fun stuff and social and cross-cultural programming. And as I said, we reach out to them in a variety of ways. And we see them in person, of course, in our office fairly regularly. We want them to have a relaxed relationship with us, but also understand that it's a partnership. We have a variety of programs. Obviously, the things that have to do with being an international student in the US, we are a dense bureaucracy, and anybody around the world who looks at the US, where we present ourselves as these very independent people who charge into the future with no obstacles in mind, somebody like that is just stunned at the bureaucracy that we actually live with. So not only is there the immigration system, students who need a social security number, which is required for employment, or who receive a stipend, who need a different number from our government, or students who want a driver's license. And so all of these things have an impact through our immigration system. And so we support your students with all of these things because in many instances we provide documentation. In many instances we simply educate students as to here's how these things work. And of course, undergraduates often have not dealt with bureaucracies in their lives at all. That is true of domestic undergraduates as well. So when our domestic students for the first time have to file taxes, what do? They call their mom and dad. Well, for an international student, that is a little bit more difficult. And so we always tell them to call us because that's what we're there for. We have, in addition to workshops, we feel that it's very important for international students to have a community to connect to. And that means not just the entire university, which is obviously what they are now exploring, and their relationships and their house system and the many kinds of new experiences they now have, but also meeting others who are international students because we need to have people in our lives with whom we have a lot in common. I'm an immigrant. I know what it's like to come to the US for the first time and to encounter everything that means. A number of my staff are foreign-born. Others have lived in countries around the world for many years. And so we've had the experience that takes one to a different place where the rules are very different. And we know very well that that means we don't always know what question to ask. We just have a sense of, here is what I'm trying to do, and now who can help me with that? So we always say to students, it doesn't matter what it's about. If you have a question, it's always okay to come to us, because if we don't have the answer, we certainly know with whom to connect you. So there is never a, we don't do that. There is never a no. There is usually a yes or a yes but or a no, but here is the person, and let me send an email message to that person to introduce you to make sure that you get that service. I should also say, even though we have quite a large number of international students, we actually have in total about 3,000 international students in the university, so roughly 20% of students in the University of Chicago are international. And we have a large number of international scholars, postdocs, researchers, and so on. Nobody is ever a number. Everybody is a person, and everybody who works with a student or anybody else takes that person very seriously as a person. And so the service is there, and the dedication across the university is there for everyone. We have an international student advisory board that currently consists of about 22 people, approximately half of them college students and half of them graduate students. We meet with this board monthly. They are a very helpful body to help us understand what at any given time international students are concerned about or talking about. There are big topics that we're very well aware of. We help them understand what is happening in the university so they can advocate for other international students. And we certainly get a lot of input from them in terms of the programming we develop, issues that we need to explore, and so on. And we also want new international students to step into an environment where they can exercise their own leadership ambitions. When our international advisory board started a number of years ago, in one of the first meetings, somebody said, the university has a liaison to the Board of Trustees. One is a graduate student, one is an undergraduate student. Can we have an international liaison to the Board of Trustees? And I said, if you're in this institution, you either are an undergraduate or you are a graduate student. And so how about standing for office to represent your population? And at that time, 5-6 years ago, that was still a new thought for our international student. It has now become mainstream. So one of our Ombud students is an international student. We have international students involved in student government and so on. So there is leadership that our international students are also contributing to the university on behalf of their international fellow students, and that's really great to see. So there is a lot of that happening. There are a number of immigration matters that parents sometimes are worried about up front. Full-time enrollment, and I got a question about letters that confirm full-time enrollment. All your student has to do is come to our front desk and ask for a letter for a full-time enrollment, and our front desk receptionist will handle that right there. So that's a very simple process. There are other things that are very simple to accomplish by just coming to the office and just quickly completing something. We have tried to put as many support pieces online as possible. So for example, we have international orientation and other information pieces on our website. However, I will also see all of your students on Thursday morning for the international student orientation, where we will talk about some of these things in somewhat greater depth, and where we also begin to make more of a connection. I've met some of your students over the past few days. Some have been in international peer orientation, some have been in an event for UChicago leads and so on. So I've met a number of your students already, but the orientation on Thursday gives us a chance to see everybody face to face and start to build a closer relationship. There are visa versus status concerns that sometimes arise. It may help you to know that visa and status are two different things. The visa stamp in your student's passport will expire at some point, and it doesn't matter. The only thing it is needed for is to enter the US. While the student is in the US, what he or she needs is the I-20 or the DS-2019 that has not yet expired. So it's very important to understand that the visa can expire. The I-20 or the DS-2019 cannot. And so students are sometimes nervous when they say, well, I anticipate being here for this long, but this is when my visa expires. And we always tell them your visa is like the key to your house. While you're in the house, you have no use of it. If you leave the house and you need to come back in, that's when you have to have a key, and that means at that point you have to have a valid visa. Travel and reentry, there are certainly times of the year when a lot of our students will travel, for example, to come home over vacation time and so on. We have handouts for them. We do all the paperwork that they need to do. They need to get a signature. And so all of these things are very predictable to us in the cycle of the time of a student here. So we work with them to make sure that they have these things covered. And certainly if there are questions, we steadily have a stream of questions coming to our office. They typically come to our front desk, a central intake point. And the value of that is if one of my advisors is away, for example, we just had a new baby in OIA, and that advisor was away for 3 months on maternity leave. Well, since all the email comes to a central intake point, that meant it then went to those individuals who filled in for her, rather go to her mailbox, leaving the student with a message saying, I'm gone for the next 2 months, which would be kind of a scary thing to get. So all of these questions come to us, and on a daily basis we answer those, and that is very much the bread and butter work that we do. Employment is something that comes into play for many of your students at some point, maybe through a Metcalf internship or something of that nature. We do a number of workshops every year when we're getting to the point where students are applying for that. So we make sure that they understand what is needed, how the process works. We answer a lot of questions so that they're aware. Any service rendered for remuneration is considered employment, and we work with them. Sometimes they're going to engage in something where they're saying, is this employment? What do I do with that? Occasionally, they may volunteer with an agency in the city of Chicago strictly as a volunteer. And so we'll advise them on what is needed or what is not. Social security numbers, tax information, and driver's licenses, all of those are gnarly when somebody is new. Fortunately, individuals who have, if your son or daughter is planning to drive here, individuals who have a driver's license from their home country that has not expired can drive here with that driver's license, and is really the easiest approach to that issue. Banking and cell phone. So again, we have a lot of information on our website. And of course, one of the things that's happening now during this orientation week, your sons and daughters are getting a lot of information. Actually, I hear students sometimes say at the end of O week, I'm so glad classes are starting because O week is just too much to handle. And so they will get a lot of information. But the important piece is that we connect them with resources so that they will have a sense, here are the people I can reach out to get help, whatever help may be needed. And that is really a very important message. I am German, and I come from a culture that considers manners extremely important, and that considers some things an imposition. So what one asks for is not so easy as it is maybe in the US. And so in some cultures, there may be a hesitancy to reach out to someone and ask for help. I always tell our students, these independent Americans you see in advertising and in movies and all of that, yes, they are independent, but they all have a tax advisor. They have a maid to clean their house. They have a life coach. When they have a particular task, they hire a consultant. In other words, those independent Americans are very good at using all the specialized resources that are available in our society, right? That's all in the background. That makes us look very, very good. And so as students begin their life here, I always tell them, use the resources that are here for you. If you don't come to us for help, our jobs go away. This is what we're here for. And so, so ask questions and seek help. And it makes their experience so much more successful. And we want them to thrive. We want them to succeed. And their academic life is very important. But we want them to thrive as people as they pursue these goals. And so if there is one message you can help give to your student, it is ask for help. It is never an imposition. It is never an inconvenience. It is very, very important. We have listed a number of on-campus resources. One of the things that I always want to talk to parents about is something that is a little startling because it's something that is somewhat unique in our legal system in the US, and that is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. We always refer to it as FERPA, which says that when somebody is legally an adult, we cannot share certain information about this person with another party, even the parents. So if you're calling us and you're saying, I need this document for reasons of my son's or daughter's scholarship, we will ask the son or daughter to come and manage that transaction. If you call us and say, so how is he doing in chemistry? We can't talk to you about that. And I know that coming from a different culture, this is somewhat startling, and it is for many quite unexpected. But we have to directly interact with your student, and that includes immigration matters. Now, the very good side of that is it tells you that we protect the information of your student and daughter. In other words, it is not something that anyone for any reason has access to. Only individuals who have a legitimate educational purpose within the institution have access to this information. And we don't even share within the institution if it is not for a legitimate educational purpose. So we're very mindful of privacy, of the environment we live in terms of cyber scams are everywhere, and we try to educate your students about those as well. So while you may sometimes not get a fully satisfactory answer from your son or daughter about something, if we are hesitant to have communication with you about it, please understand the framework for that. If we get an inquiry from a parent, we will usually say, would you please discuss this with your son or daughter? And we will be happy to advise her or him on this issue. If indeed the student would like a parent in the conversation, we will ask the student to send us an email message saying, it is okay to discuss my private situation with, and they will give us the indication of who that person is. So we want you to be aware of that. We are not hiding anything, nor are we trying to put obstacles between you and your student. We very much want to make sure that students and parents understand what the legal framework is. And of course, having stepped into their undergraduate life now, they are young adults, and so we also want to make sure that they learn and develop all the skills that they must have to successfully navigating all these issues. And so that is a very big piece of our work with them. On a completely different note, how many of you come from climates where it is very rarely colder than, let's say, 15 degrees Celsius? All right, only a few. How many of you come from climates where it rarely is below freezing? All right, so it looks like we have a fair number of parents who are probably better prepared for the Chicago winter than others. So that is a good opportunity to share knowledge as the day goes on. We try to get students to get a sense of it does get very cold here. It gets dark earlier in the day. It can be difficult to say, yes, I will go out there even though there is snow and ice, and I have to put so many clothes on just to leave the house. We try to have them prepared, but we also try to let them know it is really important to play in it. Yes, there is snow. Yes, there is ice. That's a great opportunity to learn to go ice skating. We have a skating rink right here on the Midway. It's a great opportunity to take a walk in the snow with your friends and afterwards have a hot chocolate party or go and have tea or have lentil soup at one of our local restaurants. In other words, it's really important not to shrink away from it. But not to shrink away from it also means good preparation. So as we get a little further into fall, we start talking about our students about shopping for winter and the fact that it's really important to wear layers of clothing. One of my observations is that when it's mildly cold, students will wear hats and gloves, and they tend to be very stylish. The colder it becomes, the less of a concern the style is, and the more of a concern it is that it is indeed warm and effective. And so as everybody is going shopping in the fall for the right winter clothing and so on, that is a point to sort of enhance that ultimately you would never buy a car without a set of specifications. We say for the Chicago winter, you need to buy your winter clothes according to specifications. Will they do what they need to do for you in winter? And then there are wonderful opportunities in winter. It is a gorgeous area when there's a new snowfall. A few years ago, we had a monumental blizzard, and for the one and only time ever, the university closed for 2 days. The university hardly ever closes, but the snow was literally this high everywhere in the city, and the university closed for 2 days. On the main quad, students had a snowball fight, and it involved in the neighborhood of 500 students. you have not lived until you've seen something like this. They had so much fun. It was wonderful. We kept our dining halls open so they could socialize. They could come in from the cold. They could spend time together and so on. And it was a remarkably good experience in spite of what a mess it was in the city overall. And so we want them to be prepared, but that's why we also have a little bit of a list that says, here are some things to think about as you're preparing for winter, and what to purchase, what to expect. If students get homesick, if students get homesick, when it's dark and cold in winter and they're thinking of home, that can be kind of hard. So it's really important to give encouragement. We do not want students to sit in their room and sort of be depressed over winter. We want them to come out and play. In the house system, there is a lot of good stuff happening. So they're gonna come out and do things anyway. But it's really important to prepare for it. And so be prepared for requests for a larger allowance for winter clothing and things of that nature, but they will have a lot of help with that. We tend to do some events where we actually teach them how to get ready for a winter day. We do a little contest where we form groups, and the group that gets the largest number of clothing items onto a person in the shortest period of time wins. And so we want them to be aware that, yes, it's a challenge if one hasn't done that before, but it's part of what makes this place remarkable and wonderful. So we really have 4 very different seasons, and there are wonderful things to do in all of them and to enjoy them. The handout does have some information about that, so that lets you take a look at that. I will stop talking at this point to answer your questions. I'm sure there are things that you will want to know.